Okay, so diving right into things, we've got a fascinating one to unpack today. That RCB versus CSK match, right?
Yeah.
You sent over some really insightful commentary from CricBuzz Live and also ESPN Cricinfo's Timeout.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to try to get under the hood of that one, see what really happened, what it all means.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about a game, well, it wasn't just any game.
Right.
RCB takes down the defending champ, CSK,
Mm-hmm.
on their home turf in Chennai.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time they've done that there since 2008.
Yeah.
And not just a win, but a really convincing win. 50 runs.
Huge margin of victory.
You were really interested in what made that happen.
Right, yeah. What are the factors here that really swung things RCB's way?
Yeah.
And what does it tell us about both these teams going forward?
So I think the first thing that struck me reading through both the CricBuzz and the ESPN analysis was just how one-sided it was.
Oh, yeah.
The CricBuzz guys were saying things like one-way traffic, Bangalore all the way.
Wow.
They said CSK didn't even really throw a punch in that chase.
They were saying, like, right from the first ball, it just felt like there was no real intent, no rhythm to their innings. At one point, they even said CSK looked like a boxer with their hands tied behind their back.
Yeah, that's a pretty vivid image, right?
It is. And over on the ESPN side, they were using words like humbling to describe that loss for Chennai, and even suggesting the final margin could have been even bigger.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really paints this picture of RCB just in complete control.
So beyond just the scoreline, where did these key differences in performance really come from?
Yeah, that's the big question. And both CricBuzz and ESPN kind of point to the same thing. RCB's just aggressive intent right from the start. With the bat, exact, keeping that pressure up throughout their innings.
And one player they highlighted was Phil Salt.
Oh, yeah.
His early hitting really putting CSK on the back foot right away.
And, you know, that really emphasizes what we're seeing more and more these days in T20 cricket. You've got to make the most of those power play overs.
Right. For those who might not be as familiar, the power play, first 6 overs of the innings, you have fielding restrictions in place.
Right.
Gives the batsmen a bit more freedom to go after it.
Yeah.
And RCB, they really did.
Yeah.
I mean, even a bowling attack as good as CSK's, they were forced to react defensively. And ESPN actually did this really cool comparison of the power play scores. RCB, they were off to the races 56 for 1 in their first 6 overs.
Wow.
CSK,
Yeah.
they could only manage 30 for 3.
Oh, huge difference.
Huge difference. And you could see how that early pressure that RCB built with the bat, it really translated into wickets for their bowlers later on.
Okay. And talking about those RCB bowlers, both sources picked up on how effective their seam bowlers were, in particular their use of a hard length.
Hard length.
So that's, you know, that area just short of a good length.
Right.
Makes it really awkward for the batsman.
Yeah.
Can't quite decide whether to come forward or go back.
Right.
And they highlighted Josh Hazelwood as someone who really exemplified that disciplined approach.
So it really speaks to how important it is to adapt your bowling to the conditions. You know, while RCB's seamers were finding success with that hard length, the ESPN guys, they also pointed out how much turn RCB spinners were getting. And consistently, you know, real sharp turn. And this was on that Chapak pitch.
Now that's interesting, right?
Very interesting.
Because Chennai, that's known for being spin-friendly.
Absolutely. Home of the mystery spinner.
And CSK, they've got a really strong spin attack themselves.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't seem to have the same kind of impact in this match. So does that mean that RCB were just bowling their spin better? Or were the pitch conditions just not what CSK were expecting?
That's a really good question. A lot of intrigue there.
All right, so let's switch gears for a second and talk about CSK's performance.
Okay.
Our sources, they raise several concerns coming out of this loss.
Yeah.
A big one was the failure of their middle order.
The middle order, huh?
Yeah. So there's this worry that that crucial part of their batting lineup, it's just not clicking.
Right.
And they're maybe becoming a little bit too reliant on it when their top order doesn't fire. You know, and in this match, it was noticeable. They didn't really have anyone step up in those middle overs and make a big contribution.
You know, it's fascinating because that middle phase of a T20 innings, it's so vital for building momentum.
Yeah.
When your top order doesn't get going, you need that middle order to, you know, first absorb that pressure.
Right.
And then launch a counterattack.
Yeah.
And the CricBuzz guys were really emphasizing how CSK just lacked that impetus, that dynamism in those middle overs, especially compared to, what RCB were getting from their lower order towards the end of their innings.
Another talking point was MS Dhoni's batting position,
Oh, yeah. Interesting one.
coming in at number 9.
9.
Yeah. But then he ended up being CSK's top scorer,
Right.
30 runs off just 16 deliveries.
That's classic Dhoni, right?
So the analysts over on CricBuzz, they were wondering if maybe, given his form, he should be batting higher up the order.
Yeah, I can see that.
Provide a bit more stability to the innings,
Yeah.
give him more time to build in innings, or even just set a platform for others.
And it always brings up that classic cricket strategy question. Where do you bat your match winners? Dhoni, legendary finisher.
Oh, yeah.
But the argument here is that particularly when the top and middle order has struggled, bringing him in earlier could be really valuable.
Right.
His leadership, his tactical now, it's undeniable. But his batting form right now suggests he could have an even bigger influence batting higher.
And Sam Curran's performance was also something that came up.
Okay, yeah.
And his position in the batting order.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sense that maybe he's batting a little too high and maybe not having the impact that you'd expect from him in that role.
So, again, that highlights how important role clarity and player fit is.
Yeah.
Curran, super talented all-rounder.
Oh, yeah.
Expectations are naturally high for a player like him.
Mm-hmm.
But if the experts are saying his current batting position isn't quite right, that's something the CSK management will have to look at.
Yeah. You need to find the right slot for each player to really contribute their best.
Absolutely. It's all about that team balance.
Now, the ESPN analysts, they also brought up the pitch.
Okay.
This was in Chennai.
Right.
And they raised this possibility that maybe the Chepauk pitch, it wasn't playing quite how everyone expected.
Interesting.
And that maybe that disrupted CSK's plans, particularly because they, tend to rely a lot on their spin bowling.
Right.
And in this context, they mentioned this comment from Fleming, the coach. He actually said that he had no say in the pitch preparation.
Huh. That is surprising.
It is, right. Because you think of teams, especially on their home ground, they usually have a really good understanding of the pitch, how it's going to play.
Yeah.
They can even influence, how it's prepared to suit their strengths.
Right. CSK has always been really good at that.
Exactly. So if Fleming's saying that there was a lack of input there, or the pitch was behaving unexpectedly, it kind of makes you wonder if that contributed to their spinners not having their usual impact.
Yeah, you have to think so. I mean, it definitely adds another layer to the whole thing.
And then one final point on CSK's performance.
Okay.
The CricBuzz commentators, they brought up those dropped catches,
Oh, right. Yeah.
saying that, those could have been really significant moments in the match.
Potentially changing the momentum.
Yeah.
In a high-pressure game like that, you just can't afford those lapses in the field. Giving the batsman a second chance, but also it can have this negative psychological impact on the fielding team.
Right.
Suddenly, the momentum shifts.
Okay. So let's turn our attention to RCB.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What were the positives for them?
Well, Raja Patidar's captaincy, it got a lot of praise, especially on CricBuzz.
Oh, interesting.
They really liked his tactical decisions. Having 2 slips in early, those proactive field placements, that clear game plan of trying to get up around that 200-run mark, and, of course, his own contribution with the bat.
So it sounds like we're seeing the emergence of a captain who's really got a vision, and he's able to put that into action on the field.
Exactly. The commentators, they specifically pointed out that clarity in his approach and how it seemed to really influence the whole team's performance.
What both sources also made clear, this wasn't just a one-man show.
Right.
It was a real team effort from RCB.
Yeah, they had contributions from so many different players.
Right, and that's why they were saying it was so hard to pick a single player of the match.
I mean, those are the best kind of victories, right? Where
Right.
everyone's stepping up, everyone's contributing, speaks volumes about the team culture, Everyone's bought into the plan.
Absolutely. And it makes them such a dangerous opponent, right?
Yeah.
You're not just facing 1 or 2 star players.
Yeah.
You've got threats all the way down the order.
Absolutely. Unpredictable keeps the other teams guessing.
And another key difference they highlighted about RCB this season is just their mindset.
Okay. How so?
They've really embraced this aggressive approach
Really?
with both bat and ball.
So it's like a real shift in their strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a change in their whole philosophy, right?
I mean, in T20 cricket, that proactive, fearless approach can really pay off.
Yeah.
Puts the opposition on the back foot straight away.
Some great individual bowling performances were also highlighted.
Like who?
Bhuvneshwar Kumar, they call him Bowie,
Hmm.
and Josh Hazelwood.
Ah, yeah, those two were fantastic.
They really kept CSK's batsmen in check.
Yeah, and we talked about that hard length earlier.
Right.
Those guys, they were bowling it with such control and precision, made it so difficult for CSK to score freely.
Another interesting point they brought up on CrickBuzz was the influence of the coach, Andy Flower.
Oh, yeah.
They were saying how he's really instilled this strong mentality in the team.
Makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. Making sure all the players are on it, as they said.
A good coach can really transform a team's performance, just by shaping that mindset, that belief.
And the fact that the commentators specifically mentioned Flower, it kind of suggests he's playing a big part in this positive shift we're seeing from RCB.
Yeah, it sounds like he's having a real impact.
Okay, now let's talk about what this win means for RCB in the bigger picture.
Okay.
The fact that they broke that long winless streak in Chennai, it goes all the way back to 2008.
Wow.
Both sources really emphasized how big of an achievement that was. They were calling it a statement win.
A statement win.
Yeah, like they're sending a message to the rest of the league.
Right. We're here to play.
Yeah. And they also talked about how it's really boosted their net run rate.
Which is huge.
For those who might not be as familiar, net run rate is basically how you rank teams if they have the same number of wins.
Okay.
It takes into account how many runs they're scoring, how many runs they're conceding.
Right.
So in a tight league like the IPL, a good net run rate can be the difference between making the playoffs and going home.
Oh, absolutely. Every run counts.
Yeah. And, beyond the numbers, I think there's also a real psychological boost that comes with a win like that.
Oh, yeah. Breaking a drought at a venue that's been a bit of a bogey ground for you, that injects a huge amount of confidence into the team.
And, of course, you can't talk about a win like this without mentioning the fans.
Oh, yeah. The RCB faithful.
You could hear the excitement in the commentary. That question's starting to pop up. Could this be their year?
Right, right. Every year, that hope springs eternal.
But both sources, they were also quick to remind everyone it's a long tournament.
Oh, yeah. The IPL is a marathon, not a sprint.
2 wins, it's a great start, but it doesn't guarantee anything.
Absolutely.
They also pointed out we haven't seen RCB play at home yet.
That's where things could get really interesting.
Right. They've got such a powerful batting lineup.
Oh, yeah. On their home ground, that could be pretty formidable.
So to sum up our deep dive here, RCB, really dominant performance against CSK.
Driven by that aggressive batting approach.
And some really disciplined bowling. They exposed some vulnerabilities in CSK's batting lineup, raised some questions about their strategies. That historic win in Chennai, it's a massive moment for RCB, for their fans.
Definitely a big statement.
But, the season's still young. We've got a lot of cricket still to play.
Hopefully, this deep dive has given everyone a better understanding of what went down in that match.
Yeah.
All the different factors that contributed to such a decisive result. It just shows you how quickly things can change in T20 cricket. A bit of intent, a bit of skill, and suddenly the whole narrative shifts.
Absolutely. And on that note, here's a final thought for everyone to ponder. We've seen RCB with this really clear shift in their approach.
More aggressive, more proactive.
Exactly. And we're seeing other teams playing that way too. So are we witnessing a kind of evolution in the way the IPL is played? Will the traditional powerhouses, teams like CSK, how are they going to adapt to this new landscape? It's going to be fascinating to watch as the season unfolds. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure.
Always a good chat.